Welcome, witches, wizards, and muggles alike, to another enchanting episode of Magical Tales from the Slytherin Common Room, bringing your favorite Harry Potter fanfiction to audio format. So sit back, relax, and lock your headphones and let the magic begin. Apostasy by Deydralinne, Chapter 15, Pink Wellies and Prickly Pears. It felt so surreal to be walking down the street, passing muggles who carried on about their days as normal. The fresh floral scent of a nearby florist filled the air, mingled with the smell of freshly baked bread. Daphne took the lead, strolling down the street in another of her navy blue pinstripe suits, her long blonde hair hanging loosely down her. Pansy flounced along, tugging on her arm to direct her to a nearby shop window to gush over how the shoes on display would be perfect to go with the white romper she donned for their trip into the village. The story had indeed worsened, and after an hour or two, Theo had carried her back to their room and shut everyone else out. Blaze and Draco agreed to make excuses for his absence at their dinner, and Pansy pointedly offered to show Hermione and Ginny the town below the cliffs. War had not reached them here, and it felt peculiar. She had killed what she would estimate to be several hundred people at this point, maybe more, and she could take down a fully grown man in no time at all. She had blown up buildings and set them on fire, taken what she needed without remorse, and on a few secret occasions helped Ginny to torture people for information. Not that the Order knew that. But here, there was a muggle man sitting outside of a cafe, dipping his croissant into his coffee and reading a book, one leg crossed over the other without a care in the world. Is this what her life would have been if she had fled at the start of the war? That feeling annoyed her as it bounced around in her head. She didn't want to be that person, living in ignorant bliss to the horrors of the world. She liked who she had become, even if it meant that her hands were stained with the blood of those she had killed to become who she is now. She thinks that's the main issue Harry and Ron had with her. She didn't regret taking a life, but it made her morally gray in their minds. Pansy stopped and twirled around to face her outside of an old bookstore with a teasing smirk. "Will this be the rest of our afternoon?" Hermione scoffed. "No. I no longer devour books like I used to, only when the information within is necessary." Ginny reached out and latched onto her arm with an iron grip, her eyes wide and smile tugging at her face. "There's an ice cream store," she screeched, pulling a few odd looks from passerby. "Yes," Daphne answered, turning her head and looking at her as if she had indeed lost the plot. Hermione chuckled. "We haven't had ice cream since Fortescue was killed." "That was like 8 years ago," Pansy frowned. "Hence her desire to amputate my arm with her razor-sharp claws," Hermione smiled through gritted teeth. "What? Oh, sorry. Can we please get ice cream?" Ginny asked. Not waiting for the answer, she crossed the road and made her way towards the small blue and white shop, leaving the three of them standing there staring after her. Hermione shook her head. "No need. She will be out soon, probably with 100 tubs of ice cream. We'll probably need to cast a stasis charm on it, though, because I can't imagine it won't melt before we get home. And if that happens, you do not want to be around her because she will flip out." Turned to look at the display in the window of this. Hermione turned to look at this. There wasn't much of the store at all, but the light flooding in towards the back of the shop indicated that there would be an outdoor garden center out back. Normally, she wouldn't think twice about passing a nursery by, but something in the display had snagged her subconscious. What was it? Her eyes narrowed and she did another sweep of the window, finally falling on a promotional poster with one tiny little picture on the edge, a photo of the back of their shop. Again, nothing special if not for a particular plant captured among them. Prickly pear. It wasn't a rare plant, but it was not a common one that she was used to seeing. They preferred to grow in warmer climates than the United Kingdom, where she was used to living. It seemed that here it was suitable enough for it to survive. Hermione entered the shop and immediately sought out the shop clerk, a little old lady who reminded her of her Nana Ruth. "Prickly pear, do you still have one?" Hermione demanded a little too harshly. The woman, startled at her sudden appearance. "Oh, dearie me. I'm sorry, sweetheart. What was that?" Pansy rushed into the shop behind her. "Granger, you can't just take off like that. If you wanted to come in here, all you had to do was say—" "Prickly pear," Hermione snapped, causing the woman to look a little taken aback. "I saw in the window a photo that you had a prickly pear. Do you still sell it?" "Oh." The woman dusted her hands off on the rag. "Well, yes, I do have one. Afraid no one wanted to buy it, so it's beginning to look a little sad. It wasn't supposed to be out the back for this long." The clerk began a slow bustle out back to show Hermione the plant. "Here we are, dear." Her long, bony fingers pointed at the cactus in the corner of the courtyard. It was indeed looking a little sad, but that's fine. She would bring it back. The second Hermione had seen it in the window, the cogs had begun turning in her brain, with Astoria being at the center of it all. She spun around on Pansy, who took a step back at the abruptness of it. Do you have a greenhouse? The black-haired witch shrugged. Of course, we don't use it, though, so it probably needs a cleanup. Hermione looked around and began to gather the items that she would need in a flurry of determination. She acquired a large black potting pot tub and threw gardening tools and gloves inside, bags of compost and potting mix, some sand and fertilizer. Hermione grabbed several garden spades and made her way back into the store. She dumped it all on the counter, looking at Pansy, and pointed at the pile. Pansy raised her eyebrows at Hermione and bit her tongue in the side of her mouth. Hermione rolled her eyes. Please, she grumbled before going to retrieve the cactus from out back. Her eyes roamed over a shelf next to the door. Pans, what size shoe does Theo wear? Pansy shrugged, a scowl still in her face as she fumbled through her wallet. I don't know. A 12? 12 and a half? Why assume I know just because I like fashion? Hermione rolled her eyes and grabbed 2 pairs of gumboots off the shelf. She had a small pair of blue ones for herself with pictures of leaves covering them, and rather unfortunately for Theo, the only color they had in his size was plain hot pink. Hopefully he wouldn't mind. She couldn't imagine that he would be too bothered by the color, and more likely would be bothered by the concept of rubber boots as a whole. Dumping them on the counter as well before bumping shoulders with Pansy. Thank you. It's for Astoria. I'll explain later. Mention of the blonde witch currently at home, riddled with pain, bloodied noses, vomiting, and migraines had Pansy's face softening, and whatever bad mood Hermione had put her in falling away. Ginny had indeed bought 2 bags full of tubs of ice cream, but had returned by the time Pansy and Hermione emerged from the nursery, juggling and nearly failing to carry everything. There was a downside, it seemed, to be in a country so untouched by a magical war. She couldn't simply wave her wand and levitate everything out the front door. What in the... Later, Pansy cut Daphne off. Daphne waved her hand in an indication of everything. Well, I guess it's home time then. Yeah, sorry, I should get started on this as soon as possible, Hermione mumbled, not really paying the woman any attention, peering instead into one of Ginny's bags to see what flavors lay inside. Ginny nodded in response to her unasked question when Hermione looked up at her. And chopped fudge brownie? What just happened there? Pansy chuckled. How do you guys do that? Communicate without speaking? We've been good friends for a decade and a half. We know each other. The only flavor Hermione will eat is lemon sherbet, preferably with chocolate fudge. That's disgusting, Daphne frowned, taking the items from Pansy's hand. I thought so too at first, but it actually works, Ginny shook her head. Hey, did you get mint choc chip? It was Pansy's turn to peer into the bag. You mean toothpaste? Ginny smirked, teasing the black-haired witch. Daphne and Hermione shared a look with each other, ending in a pair of small smiles in camaraderie before their companions launched into a full debate. Daphne knocked on the door softly for her, but Hermione wasn't fucking around. She waved her wand, and the door flew open with a bang. What the hell, Granger? Daphne exclaimed, while Theo and Astoria, both lying on the bed, jumped. What the fuck are you doing? Theo hissed in clear annoyance. Come on. You and I have a job to do. Daphne, stay with Astoria. Hermione threw the hot pink gumboots into the room from the doorway. The action seemed to stun Theo, who stared down at the Wellies in intrigue. What are those? Like them? Hermione beamed with a smirk. Theo crawled to the end of the bed to look at them. Love them! Hermione chuckled. Fantastic. Put them on. The sun was dipping lower in the sky as they made their way out back to the patio, where they had left all their new purchases. I need you to get me a cauldron and to help me set up the shed for my experiments. All right? Theo was a little too busy looking down at the bright pink gumboots with a grin on his face. This was urgent. Why? Hermione thought for a moment about how to explain it. She didn't want to give him false hope. This wasn't a cure. Whatever the cure was very deep in old, forgotten dark magic. But there was a possibility, a small one, but a possibility all the same, that this could help make the bad days less horrible. And Hermione levitated everything and motioned for Theo to lead the way. I have a potion in mind that might help give Astoria a boost. Like an energy drink. It won't fix everything, but it might just take some of the edge off. She finally offered as they made their way around the side of the house and down a small hill. Theo stopped in his tracks. What? The only instances in which Hermione has seen Theo bothered all involved Astoria. She held her breath. I can't promise anything, Theo. It won't make it better completely. Just might help a little. He nodded and swallowed a frown forming. What's an energy drink? Hermione giggled on another idea forming in her head. Oh, just wait. Your whole life is going to change. The shed itself was small, but it was cleaner than what she expected, and she would still have enough room to do what she needed to do in here. She actually felt better that it was away from the house and prying eyes. At the order base, she'd been forced to do her experiments in her room, hiding away. On 2 separate occasions, Kingsley had had her room turned over while she had been out, and her experiments had been left her with an unease about experimenting, and while she didn't distrust the other occupants of the chateau, she didn't exactly trust them either. Well, Princess, here we are. What do you need me to do? Theo sent several balls of light flying to the sconces on the walls, illuminating the shed, which was more like another room with a soft, warm white glow. Hermione pulled a piece of parchment from the tub and a quill and began scribbling a list. I'll need these ingredients. The fresher, the better. Do you have elves? Hermione asked absently. Zimmy cleans and cooks if no one else has. Gimli does the gardens, Theo answered. She could see him shifting from foot to foot in the corner of her eye nervously. Relax, Theo. I'm not going to yell at you again, she drawled. You remember that? It was hard to forget. Looking back, it was probably one of the most ridiculous reactions she had during the height of her spew campaign. Unfortunately, Theodore Knott had ended up on the receiving end of a rather impassioned attack on his character when he merely mentioned that most old wizarding families had grown up with them and thus were reliant on them. So if she wanted to free the elves, then she would need to provide an alternative. Hard to forget. Sorry, by the way. Will Zimmy come if I call him? Zimmy, Hermione summoned without waiting for Theo's answer. A rather old, elderly-looking elf appeared with a grunt in acknowledgement. Hello, Zimmy. Pleasure to meet you. Would you be able to give this room a sterilization clean, please? The elf grunted again and got to work slowly casting small circles of magic that would sterilize the room. Hermione handed the parchment to Theo, who took it with trepidation. Hermione, his voice trailed off. I know. She turned away then and exited the shed to begin the repotting process for the cactus. There would be enough of the fruit to get maybe a dozen potions out of. After that, it would be a matter of waiting for the cactus to heal and pick up its production or acquire more prickly pears. Either way, Hermione really desperately wanted this to work. She could have used magic, sure, but she didn't want to risk any damage being done to the root system, and she definitely didn't want the plant to be shocked by her magic at all. The result being that by the time she was done, she was covered in dirt and compost. The cactus looked happier in his new home already, which gave her hope, but there was still so much riding on this. She was just in the process of washing her hands and boots off with a quick aguamenti when Theo reappeared. Whoa, they came out so clean. His eyes locked onto the boots on her feet. Hermione chuckled. Yeah, they're designed to be easy to clean. Keep your feet dry and all the good stuff. She raised an eyebrow at him. Did you find everything already? Theo nodded. Dee enjoys making potions. He had a lot of the ingredients already. I'll let him know it was me who pinched his ingredients when he gets back. Hermione nodded and returned to see that Zimmy had disappeared, obviously having completed the task. All right then, let's get started, shall we? Theo unloaded everything onto the counter. You're okay with me being in here? Hermione shrugged. Normally, no. I would tell you to fuck off. But this is for Astoria, and if anything happens to me, then you need to know how to make it, assuming it even helps. Theo froze in his movements, his stare burning into her. Are you expecting something to happen to you? His tone had shifted to calculating. Hermione rolled her eyes. We're in a war, Theo. I'm hated by 95% of your organization and 100% of mine. The chances something doesn't happen to me are a lot slimmer than the chances they do. I'm not stupid. I know how it goes.